we got? Pete, lead us off. What do you got?
Jarrett Grace, what's sort of his status right now?
Well, he had surgery yesterday to place a rod in that leg. Again, I think the complications of the surgery are such that I don't want to get into all of them, but the rod is going to stabilize the healing process for him. Remember, he had 4 breaks there. So the surgery went very well. I just talked to Brian Radigan. He feels like there's no reason why, if proper bone growth, which he had in the 4 breaks. So all 4 of those came together very, very well. If he went in there and there was instability in the 4 breaks, I think there would have been some concern as to whether he could make it back in the fall. But the indication is that he had great growth there. The rod is for stabilization, and we'll know in 6 weeks if he heals the way he did prior to. There's great optimism that in 6 weeks we'll see on the x-rays and the scans that he'll be ready for the fall.
Is that, if he is ready for the fall, is he going to be ready at 100%, or is strength gains going to have to carry through the season?
I think if this was a if the brakes, what I was told, if the brakes were not stable, then this would be rounding into shape later, and then probably using the season to kind of get him there. I think what we're saying is that in 6 weeks, if we get the kind of growth that we're expecting, he will be ready for the fall. So we're hoping to get good news in 6 weeks, I guess is the best way to put it.
Another player recovering, Nicky Barati, we saw full contact in 30 scrimmages last week.
Yes, he is in full contact, fully cleared, involved in today's scrimmage as well.
How has he progressed with coming back from that?
Much of what we expected from Nicky in terms of his athleticism is what we're seeing, and he's fully engaged and competing, and learning the system like everybody else. But good, tough kid, athletic, and getting back in the swing of things.
Brian, with the middle linebacker situation, you got Schmidt there now. I mean, are you thinking more about plan Bs at this point, or are you going to wait 6 weeks to determine kind of what's going on there? Like maybe moving somebody, or thinking about getting a freshman ready?
Well, I think everything's on the table at that position. I think we're going to, Joe Schmidt is a very smart player at that position. I think he's a scholarship player for us. He's doing the things that we want him to do. Mike is learning. I really think that it's really too early to tell where we are at that position. I think to use the spring to determine who the middle linebacker is, with a lot of new things going in, is not something that we're concerned with at this point. I think it's going to take time for that to round itself out. So that includes, dipping into freshmen that will come in the fall as well. So I think this is a question that's not going to be answered until we move ourselves through the preseason.
And the Larkin kid, the walk-on, Mike's kid.
Yeah.
Just your impressions of him. So.
Really pleased with him. I think in terms of, how would I look at him is he's a guy that is going to contribute here. I don't know that he's ready right now to contribute, but he could be a special teams player for us next year. He's a good football player.
Staying on the topic of players recovering, how has the progress of Chase Hounshell been? And did you even think he would be back after his setbacks the past couple of years?
Well, I think initially I didn't think he would be, but his resolve and want to come back was pretty evident as we went through the months and through the season. When we started to practice with us it was pretty clear to me that he wanted to come back. And then through weight training and conditioning, and now obviously through all of his contact, and he's been involved in full contact, and I think that here's a young man that there was no question in his mind. He had made a decision that I don't know that he knew exactly what was going to happen, but he knew that he was going to get himself back on the field.
Do you think you can get some mileage out of him? I mean, is he the player
yeah.
that you thought?
Well, I think when we recruit every single player, 85 scholarship players, every player comes in with the mindset that they're going to be All-Americans. They should, but I think for us, it's getting the best out of each individual. And I think we're going to get everything out of Chase Hounshell because he's going to give us everything he has. And so, yeah, he's going to be a contributor to our football team in some fashion.
Brian, he's still about 270. Where would you like to see him come August?
I think if he can stay in that 270 to 280 range, I think Coach Longo feels like in that range he can be athletic for us, he can move, he can do some things for us because he is a strong kid. That's where we feel like he's going to be maximizing his potential. Anything bigger than that, we don't feel like he can maximize his potential.
So you're just not that concerned about what the number says on the scale?
No, he's very, very strong. He plays well with his hands, and one of the things that he's always taken care of his body, and he's always been very, very strong. So we feel like at that weight, again, he's not a guy that is going to play, 60 snaps in there, but he's going to contribute in a manner that, we'll use him to be an effective player for us.
And staying on the defensive side, Cole Luke, what have you seen from him at the halfway point of spring?
He's still, he's still in the developmental process. I mean, Kaveri is, ahead of all of the corners, and probably by, a good amount. It's probably not, it's a big, there's a big difference there. But, we just got to get Cole to play with a little bit more urgency sometimes. But he's coming along, and he's making progress every single day, and we just got to keep working with him. And he's making good progress. We just got to keep him, really, he's, at this point, he's doing exactly what we want him to do. We just need to continue to push him because we've set a high bar with Kavari. So now he sees that, and that's where we got to get him to.
What do you like about him, or what did you like about him? What jumped out when he came in?
Oh, he's got incredible feet. I mean, fast feet, for his quickness, size. I mean, he's got all the physical attributes. We're working on technique. We're working on, suddenness. We're working on tackling. Those things.
Coach, how much of a help has having a guy like Kyle McCarthy join your staff been?
Well, I think it's more than just help. He's really a guy that can be a full-time coach, and that's hard to do. Look, just because you played in the NFL doesn't mean that translates into being a good coach and a good teacher, because that's who we are. We're teachers and educators, and he just has a really good way about him, and his ability to communicate and teach is a trait that he just naturally has. He loves the game. He really enjoys being around the players, and so he carries that with him every single day. So he can stand in front of the group, and he has immediate credibility as a Notre Dame football player and captain and a guy who played in the NFL. But you need even more than that, and you have to be able to do a great job of teaching, and he does a really good job of teaching.
And where are you guys at as a whole at this point in spring practice? Are you where you want to be? Are you behind? Are you ahead?
I think we're making progress offensively. We were better today. Defensively, I think we're probably we've got to add a couple of things, a couple of looks. We've got to get into some of our 3-down stuff. We've been focusing a lot of our 4-down packages. We've got to, get some work on our 3-down stuff that we'll probably start on Monday with that. Some more of our loaded fronts, short yardage stuff. Offensively, just clean up, some of the sloppiness, offensively, and just be a little bit more detailed. Our quarterbacks and receivers, Everett doesn't know a lot of these guys, and he's starting to get a better, feel for them, as well as Malik. So I think it's just offensively, just spending more time, more repetition, and then defensively, we got a couple more packages to put in.
Good chance to talk to Jerron yesterday, and he was talking about how much more fun he's having in the 4-3, which I guess is understandable for a D tackle. But have you noticed more of a spark out of him, or most of those guys up front with a different system?
I think just naturally when there's something new, there's, a little bit more there on a day-to-day basis. I can understand the nose guards being happy about anything that doesn't have to do with 2 gapping. They would be excited. But yeah, I just think that there's an energy there that Coach Van Gorder brings to the defense anyways, that there's a lot of excitement, that there's some new teaching and there's some new terminology, and there's, look, who doesn't like to blitz? Who doesn't like to, 2 gap? Who doesn't like to rip through the A gap and not have to worry about, holding on, and can get into the backfield? So I think there's a lot of excitement with some of the schemes that we're running.
Brian, why did you feel it necessary to be a 2-gap team in your early years here?
We needed to get a fundamental base defensively, where we were gap conscious, fundamentally sound across the board defensively, and I felt like, to start anywhere else would not give us the base that we needed. And so that's, for me, it's always been about starting defensively at the core, and that was the fundamentals of gap integrity, keeping the ball in front of you, and playing that kind of defense. And that's always been the staple, and then you keep developing it from there. And we've reached a point where we can add on, and then that's what we're doing right now defensively.
I know this is speculative, but if Coach Diaco had stayed, you might have gone.
Yeah, we were going to be transforming our defense into more of a 3rd down sub-package defense. We were creating those looks as we move forward.
I wanted to ask you about Northwestern and the union stuff going on there this weekend. You spoke about that earlier when it first came up, but now that it's a little more official, have you had further talks with Jack about that? And what would your reaction be if a Notre Dame player or a group of players decided to come out and try to start a union?
I think, we would respect anything that our players, would want to do relative to, their creativity, their ability to, want to talk about things of that nature. I think that's one of the great things about being in a university setting. You're never going to squash or, hold, students back from that kind of dialogue, right? But I think as it relates to me personally, I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, and so I'm more interested in relationships based upon, player coach than employee. So as much as we want to be in an atmosphere where we create a creative learning environment, I also want to be individually in a place where I'm an educator and a teacher. So, wherever that meets is kind of where I stand on it. And, I think there's a long way before we have to get to that point where, a decision needs to be made. So, I'm not at a point where I'm going to meet with our football team and discuss the the pluses and minuses of putting a union together, I can say that.
Do you think it's potentially a good thing or a bad thing for college football to have that going on?
I think I looked at more of kind of a bigger picture thought process, and I haven't really thought about it in its real terms as whether it would be positive, for college football or detrimental. I think I've looked at it more as in a kind of a microcosm, like, all right, do they tax your scholarship? You know what I mean? I've kind of looked at it that way, and I haven't looked at it in a big picture sense.
In the past springs, you did a lot of movement or auditioning along the offensive line. How do you feel about it right now as far as it seems you have it fairly stabilized?
We got 9 guys, We had a couple of injuries there, so Hanratty was sick the other day. I think we had 8 guys, so there's not a lot of movement going on with Lombard out, right, and Nick Martin out. So, we really kind of where we are with limited numbers. We've got some reinforcements coming in the fall, but so there really isn't a chance to move a lot of the guys around. It's been pretty static.
Do you feel like the left side maybe has stabilized with Stanley moving over from the right and Steve also?
I think so. That's the way it's kind of unfolded throughout the entire spring. It's been pretty consistent, other than trying to get guys a blow here and there because of not having the depth there across the board.
Ideally, is that what you would prefer, Stanley and Elmer next to each other on the left side?
I think I don't know that that's necessarily the issue as much as it is, and I think I talked about this as, is it McGlinchey over the next guard? Is it Hanratty, McGlinchey? That's kind of the issue more than who's the right guard, the left tackle. I think I was asked earlier. I'm not a big believer in the left tackle, right tackle theory as much as getting the 5 best guys on the field. So to make a finer point, it would be, is it McGlinchey or is it Hanratty? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was referring specifically to Elmer because, he came in mainly with the reputation as an ideal tackle prospect, but most of his time has been at the guard position.
Right, and I think if we felt like Hanratty, could do the job at the guard position, that could possibly change, what we did.
Brian, what did you want to see from Tari in the spring, going from a freshman playing here or there to more of like an every down, we're relying on you as a potential starter type of kid?
I think what we're looking for from him is probably a little bit more, and we've asked him to do a little bit more. We're asking our backs to do a little bit more in pass protection this year. So we've challenged those guys in pass protection and just recall. We don't want to have to go through this teaching progression again with him, and I think we've seen that, some pretty good recall for him. And we've told him, listen, here's a chance for you to separate yourself. You got a chance to play. So if we got to treat you like a freshman, then you're taking a step back. So I've asked him to really be that guy that we don't have to go over it again and again with you. And I think he's done a pretty good job with it.
We'll end it there real quick.
Brian, you mentioned you wanted to get into the return game this week. What can you share about what you saw with that?
All we did was work off the jugs. You can't get much work because we didn't get outside. We're going to try to get out Monday morning, and hopefully we'll get some more work in. So we've been limited to just the drill work and catching the ball, and it's hard to tell coming off the jugs. We're still just a collection of guys right now, and hopefully Monday, we want to get into competitiveness with it, and it's hard to compete indoors with it right now.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.